Great. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Spark for having me along this evening, and the Auckland University. I spend a lot of time overseas. It's very rare I get a chance back in New Zealand, so it's quite an honour to be here tonight, so thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be here because something that I'm really passionate about is New Zealand and New Zealand startups. So what I've been told to talk about tonight is the Booktrack journey, which would take a lot longer than the 12 to 15 minutes I've been allocated, and also what the lessons that we've learned along the way. So I've tried to mash them together, and I'll give a little bit of an intro on Booktrack and what it is and what it isn't, and then some of the lessons I've learned and relay some stories from along the way. So first of all, to start at the beginning, and that is Booktrack's all about storytelling. So if you go back 10,000 years, stories used to be handed down from generation to generation around the fireside. We got a little bit smarter and started to then write things down on walls and then scrolls, and eventually books around about 2,000 years ago. But there's been a massive change in storytelling in the last 50 to 60 years, and that was the advent of radio, then black and white film, and that led on to sound being added, then colour, they put it in your lounge, and now we're up to 3D and holograms will be next and everything else. So, but if you look at the reading experience over that time, it hasn't really changed at all. Distribution has changed immensely. We can now carry a whole library around in our pocket, but yet we still read the same way today that people read 2,000 years ago. Of course, that's until now. And that's led to a very big problem, and that problem is, you can dress it up however you like, but people and children are just not reading anymore. And how many parents at home are saying to their kids, get off the internet, stop watching that billion-dollar budget movie or amazing film or video, or get off YouTube, stop texting your friends and read a book. Because the reality is, when you look at the competition for the entertainment dollar, when you compare reading to all of those other options, it often becomes a distant last. And in America alone, 50% of adults after they leave high school don't read a book again. So there's a big problem, and unfortunately the way that people have been addressing it, now that books went digital, everyone said you could do these amazing things, and so they said you could add video and games and make books a whole bunch more exciting. But the problem with that is when you read, you don't want to watch a video and you don't want to play a game because it takes you out of that inner imagination of the mind you can only get through reading. So it becomes a distraction to the reading process, and on the whole it's been a spectacular failure. Booktrack is the only enhancement to reading that's delivered to you while you read, and that's what makes it so powerful. So for those that don't know what Booktrack is, I'll just play a short propaganda video.
Nathan likes to read. Sometimes life gets in the way of a good read. Enter Booktrack. By blending inspired sound design with great stories, Booktrack creates a totally high-def, immersive reading experience. Ambient audio, sound effects, and music are carefully synchronized, celebrating the imagery of the author's text and drawing you deeper into the story. Booktrack's breakthrough technology can sense your reading speed and automatically adjusts pacing of the audio tracks to match.
Oh, sorry. It's okay.
If you lose your place, all you have to do is double tap on any word and the audio will resync to the section you select. You can also control the audio layers to create your ideal sound mix. Each track can be turned off, lowered, or raised depending on your personal preference. It's like having a personal composer arranging the perfect movie-style soundtrack for your book. With Booktrack, reading isn't just words on a page. It's a truly sensory experience, making it easy for Nathan to get wrapped up in a good story.
Good read?
Reading never sounded so good.
Booktrack. Hear the future of reading.
So that's Booktrack, for those that didn't know. And the main point to make about Booktrack, it's not just about building an app that's going to make reading better. It's about building the whole platform for that to exist. So that's our vision up there, but what really matters is the nice pictures. So On the left-hand side, that's our creation tool. So that's what people use to create book tracks. We're going to make that freely available to the world, so anybody can create a soundtrack for anything. It could be a blog, a love letter, a short story, a long story. But the idea is that we want to be the standard in the marketplace for adding soundtracks to books. You can then choose to sell that, share it, do whatever you want with that. And on the other side is how people participate, so they can read that through our reader, and we're talking with all the other major ebook readers about doing it with their technology. So what we're looking to do again is create that standard in the marketplace. One of the questions I often get asked is what's the effect on reading? So we got a New York University professor to do a study on it, and it proved categorically that there was an increase in comprehension and retention on reading from those who read with a book track and those who did not read with a book track. And the professor said it was statistically very significant. And but what was more astounding to him, there was people that still performed better on the tests, but they said, I probably wouldn't read like this, but yet they still did better. So it shows that there's an awesome opportunity there for education and children and the likes. Now, of course, you've already read a book track. And this is the most famous example of all. I think it just shows how it evokes emotion. There you go, there's the book track, start reading. And if I kill the sound, you know, all of the emotion goes away from that scene, all those memories sitting in there, you know. So what about Booktrack the Journey? So here's some of the things. So we've secured a bunch of funding from a number of different people. I don't want to talk too much about funding tonight, but funding's really, really, really hard to get, and it should be, because at the end of the day, your idea has to stand out enough for somebody to want to give you money to bring it to life. But that's led to, you know, the likes of Sparkbox and Derek Hanley and New Zealand Venture Investment Fund and Peter Thiel and others. There's many more. We've secured a number of book titles from noteworthy authors. So we've got, you know, Salman Rushdie, Sir Andrew Motions, the poet laureate of the UK, James Fry. For those that don't know much about America, he was the guy in the opening scene. He's infamous for going on Oprah and then getting caught out line and having to go back again. And then Oprah did her last week in America, and he did the 2 or 5 sessions with her. So he's very well known in the American market. So that video that I played at the beginning went viral because he was involved, and Petra Nemakova might have added bits of that. And on the back of that, Rolling Stones picked up the story and then did an article on us. So it's, you know, marketing. I'll talk on that soon. We're working with all the major publishers in the world and a lot of the major audio providers. So in the intro, we work a lot with Park Road Post. That's the same studio that have brought you Lord of the Rings and working on The Hobbit at the moment. So they do all of our sound production. All of the technology for book tracks developed out of our office in Auckland, but what they do definitely do all of our audio. We've won some awards along the way. We've had phenomenal coverage in the press all around the world. All the major articles have covered us, the story, in various different ways. But some of the key stats, so we've had probably over about 350 ratings in the App Store now, 81% 4 or 5 stars. When people read a book track, 42% actually complete the book. That's very, very high in e-reading terms, believe it or not. But what's more important is we've got the ability through our platform, you can try any book before you buy, and 27% of people, once they try, buy. And if anyone knows about conversion rates, that again is extraordinarily high. And one of the things about Booktrack is it's very experiential. You've got to try it before you really understand it. And that conversion rate really is testimony that once people do try, they really do like and want to buy. But when we launched, we went straight to number 3 in the App Store. We've been the top 10 book app in 20 countries. And a month after we launched, Apple emailed one day and said, we'd like you to be a key account, and which means that now we've got a problem, we've got a number to call, and every time I go to San Francisco, out to Cupertino, I meet with them, and they promote us, and they're nice people. So it's very helpful. But what really matters is what the users say. So like I said, we've had an extraordinary response on the graph there. They're all our ratings in the App Store. But you've just got to go through our Twitter feed. It's every single language of the world. The iTunes reviews are phenomenal. Again, when people try it, they really like it. So we know we're onto something, and now we've just got to make it, you know, as big as it deserves. So what I thought I'd do now is, because I'm going to get, otherwise I'll run out of time, is I thought I'd just run through some lessons that I've learned along the way and relate it back to something that's relevant to Booktrack. So the first thing is, we've had a lot of press coverage. There's just some of the samples of it there. You know, I love the Los Angeles Times one comparing us to Amazon. And the point there is just enjoy the ride. So this is really, a lot of these lessons are targeted at people that want to do startups or doing startups, and I'm sure that really the spark sort of contestants. And the first point is enjoy the ride, because there are good moments, and make sure you enjoy them when they come along. The second point is be brave, because it gets tough. And I don't know if anyone's followed Booktrack progress, but we're probably one of the few startups in America, let alone from little old New Zealand. We got covered twice within 2 weeks. One was a really great review, and one was not so good, and it attracted a lot of media attention. But there has been a lot of other negative responses along the way. But the point to keep in mind is the first article's about us. The second 2 comments are not about Booktrack at all. This is when sound was introduced to film. It had an almost identical reaction in the marketplace, and because it's disruptive technology, and it's not something I throw around willy-nilly because I think it's an overused term. But what we are doing is changing an existing market. It's bringing something in. It's making people feel uncomfortable. It's disrupting the norm. And, a lot of people are squirming because, we might be challenging their jobs or their livelihoods. And that's a great thing, and that's what we need to be doing from New Zealand. And here's just an example of it. I don't know if anyone's seen the movie The Artist, but it's a silent film if you haven't. It won a lot of Academy Awards. And this is the scene where he's the best actor in the world, and he's just been told that he's just been shown the first sound movie with sound, and that's his response. And this guy here that you see, he's the hotshot owner of the movie studio, and he's saying, "Don't let George is the future." And the amazing thing is that was really, really common at the time, that sort of response. And which leads me on to my next point is, if you got, let's innovate from New Zealand, but let's really innovate. Make sure it's new and original. These are the cartoons from 1928. So silent films used to play, and orchestras used to play at the front of the silent film. So they all lost their jobs when they started adding sound and talking to film. So they put $1 million into a campaign, a lot of money in 1928, to try and stop it from happening. And they said, this robot's coming along, it's going to kill your babies and ruin your whole livelihood. And it was a really massive campaign. But it just shows how inevitable. And now we can't even imagine movie without film. So if you're going to innovate, because we don't need another social networking app. It's been done. I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley and New York, and I spent a lot of time speaking to venture capital people, especially in Silicon Valley, and they have seen it all. So if you think you're the next social networking thing, just find another idea. The other point is solve a big problem. Don't tackle something just around the edges. If we're going to take on the rest of the world from the other side of the world, it's got to be a big problem. And for us, kids are not reading anymore. It's a big problem, and that's the sort of problem you've got to be trying to solve. Make sure the market is big and global. We're in e-books and tablets. It doesn't get much bigger than that at the moment. It's going to have 500% growth in the next 4 years. Everyone's using tablets around the world, and these are the players in our market, the biggest companies in the world. So, I think the idea is make sure, if you're going to aim for something, make sure it's a big goal, because if you make it, it's really going to set New Zealand on fire. Oh, just a tip. When you Google for pictures of Kim Kardashian, be careful, okay? All sorts of different things come up. So if you don't know who's on the left-hand side, that's Kim Kardashian. The reason I put her up there is you've got to know your target market, and that's just not, in our case, publishing in the target market. When you meet with the people in the market, you've got to know what's going on there. And I caught up with a New Zealand entrepreneur who's about to come to New York, do some work there. He said, what's happening in New York? And I said, everyone's talking about Kim Kardashian at the moment. And they said, who's that? And I think from New Zealand, 20 years ago that would have been an acceptable answer. But today, with the internet and the access to information, if you just check out your history on your Internet Explorer or Google Chrome or whatever you use, check out your history and look at the web pages you're going to, because there's no excuse now to not get out there and find out what's happening in the global market. And if you're going to the same old sites in New Zealand, you've got to really change the behaviour, because it's a big world out there and a whole bunch of things are going on. But if you are still stuck in what's happening in New Zealand, you're going to miss all the trends and understand what's happening out there. I've got the donuts there because if you ever turn up for a Monday morning about 10 o'clock in any office in America, there's always donuts sitting there because that's what they do. So it's about understanding your market, the way they work, and not just your sector. I think something that we don't do very well in New Zealand but have got a lot of potential to do extraordinarily well is marketing. And that opening video is an example of it. Traditionally, you no longer have to take a product to market via big billboards and banner ads on the internet. It's about person to person, being social, growing your tribes, and making people engage with your product in new and wonderful ways. We can do that from New Zealand, and at the moment we're recruiting for a marketing manager to do that from New Zealand, because the market now is global. It's not just in one area, and we can do that from here. But it's essential, and I think if anyone's looking at doing a startup and getting it off the ground, I'd make your first hire or business partner or co-founder, go find a marketing person and work with them on it, because that's the only way you're going to crack the market. And another big key to our success was we secured IP really, really early. Our first patent was written about 5 years ago, when we were mucking around with ideas and we were prototyping and patenting. So if you've got ideas, get in there and get it patented and get it secured. You know, trademarks, things like trademarks are important. And finally, what people forget around IP is brands. It's not about, you can leverage your own brand massively if you work with other brands. So in our case, it was Salman Rushdie, it was Jay McInerney, it's working with big publishers. So there's lots of different ways that you can make that happen. Number 9 is start early. So if you don't know my background, I actually flew with the Air Force for about 11 years as a navigator on a Ryan aircraft, and there's one landing in Antarctica, and we used to do things like search and rescue and find people in boats like that off Tokelau Islands. And my last job I did before I left the Defence Force was run the carrier protection operation around Saddam Hussein's escort as he was brought onto the carrier group in the Middle East. Now that's a long way away from publishing. And the second job I left that and I did a startup around technology. It was classified military technology. You can build systems like that and put them on warships and aircraft and different things. And now I'm in publishing. So the point is, you don't have to have the background of the industry you're getting into, but the earlier you start, the better. And I think the other point we were just discussing over here is, when I go to technology events in New Zealand, I'm one of the youngest people there. When I go to technology events in Silicon Valley, I'm one of the oldest. And that's something we've got to change. And I think initiatives like Spark are just so important, because by the time New Zealanders get into my age, they should have done 3 startups, and one of them will be a success. But the later you leave it, all of a sudden you've done your 2 or 3 jobs, you've got your wife and kids, your mortgage. It's really hard to change then, and it's really hard to take that risk on. So if there's one message I'll take away is, if you've got a burning idea, and if you can somehow manage to make it work with you, just go and do it, and don't wait for after that job or that job, because you might not get there. Next is build a strong team, and Mr. Nima, a lot of people think you need a lot of money to build a strong team. You don't. There's lots of ways you can do it. I hunted Derek Hanley down for about a year before I managed to, a few phone calls, before I finally managed to get a face-to-face with him. He still didn't get Booktrack. I made him try it, and he said to me, "You have no idea how big tablets and e-reading is in America. I've got to take this iPad and show someone in New York." And that kind of started off that whole relationship. So out there, that's our board on the top rung. Mark Darcy is the creative director at Facebook. The second rung is the people that work for us, and the bottom rung are our advisors. I've got hundreds of advisors now in Silicon Valley and New York, and that's just from getting out there and putting yourself out there and meeting people. And that's my next point, is build a normal network, not just a social one. Because it's all about getting face-to-face with people. And Derek Hanley, who's our chairman and one of our long-time investors and supporters, his bit of advice to me was, always take the meeting and never be late. So it doesn't matter where it is in the world, find a way to get there. I used to meet with people in Silicon Valley 2 years ago and say, "Where do you live?" I go, "Just Mountain View, just up the road, a little apartment." And they go, "Okay, cool." And then I'd be back in New Zealand emailing them saying, "I want to catch up, I'd like to meet you." And they say, "Oh, I've got a slot next Tuesday," and it'll be Friday. And I go, "Great, I'll see you there." I'd jump on a flight on Sunday night. I'd arrive in country Monday morning, and then they'd ring me, and then they'd email me saying, "Oh, sorry, I can't do this week. What about next Tuesday?" So then I'd be stuck. But within the amazing thing about Silicon Valley is, within an hour or a few hours, almost my whole schedule for the week was filled, because they've got a real mentality there of helping people, connecting people, and wanting to be a part of the ecosystem. And I think here people think there's an idea, I'm going to hold on to it. Up there they're going, if I'm in your same industry and I'm too slow and I'm not good enough, then I'm not worth it, I might as well help you. So they help you anyway. And that's the way it works. It's a very different mentality, because things are moving so quickly. And that's the key. You build if people say, how do I network, what do I do? You build your network by helping other people, and that's what you do. Every time you meet someone, it should be about, what can I do for them and how can I help them? I'm about to get kicked out of my... Okay. Second to last point. This one is... So an example of that was Mark Darcy. So I spent a year, I met with Mark 3 times, finally managed to have lunch with him. He said to me, "Paul, I like what you're doing. It's not for me. I don't get it. He tried it, and that was what he said. And he called it the future of reading. And then, I think this might be the last one, is be determined, but listen, if you haven't read it, read Jeff Ross's book, Compulsory Reading for Any Entrepreneur. Absolutely amazing story against the odds. And the key note there is, be prepared to work really hard. I get up at 4 a.m. every day, because that's when New York's awake. I go to bed about 11 every night. You've got to work really, really hard, because it's not an easy thing. And get to market, but quickly. Be visionary, not just set a vision. Action is more important than words, because at the end of the day, everyone does have a plan until they're punched in the face. You won't know until you put yourself out there. And this is my final slide. Is help each other. New Zealand needs you. Being an entrepreneur or doing a startup, you don't do it for the great pay, the secure job, the low hours. It's because in New Zealand we have no choice. We really do. We need more entrepreneurs. We've got to change our reliance on primary industry in New Zealand. And we need more sparks, ice houses, generators, spark box sponsors. We need everything we can to try and turn this around. So the answer is start supporting each other. And finally, if we all work together, we can take on the world from the other side of the world. But it does take everybody's effort working together, supporting each other. So finally, thank you, Spark, for having me and going over a little bit over time. And I'm going to be hanging around for a drink afterwards, so please come say hi. I'd love to help you. There's my contact details. Thanks.